Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining us for this Immerse Investor webinar. My name is Ryan Yep. I'm the head of partnerships and sales over at Immerse. Want to let you know before we get started today, on the bottom right of your screen, there is a question box. Throughout our time together today, feel free to submit questions you may have. We'll try to answer them as much as possible, but if we don't get to it, feel free to follow up with us after the webinar and we'll be happy to answer those questions. Today, we're joined by my teammates Cliff, VP of Intelligent Systems, Kit, our Chief Marketing Officer, and Renji, you guys probably know who he is, our founder and CEO over here at Immerse. I'm going to hand it off to Kit. He's going to share a little bit about what he's doing and his excitement around joining the team recently.
All right. Hey, I'm Kit. I'm fairly new to the team. That said, I've known the team for, I think, 5 years now or more. I've spent the last 12 years in marketing, both on the agency side and the client side. I sold my last agency for 7 figures. And over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with a wide range of companies, from scrappy startups to established brands. I think one of the things that has driven, success in the marketing world for me is aligning strategy with data. I don't believe that marketing is just about getting customers. It's about building scalable, adaptive growth engines. So I think one of the questions was, how do we plan for scale? Well, we're building scalable systems from Jump Street. We've already implemented quite a few, and it's going very well. So with these core foundations, I think we'll be able to scale beyond just today. Going back to building scalable, adaptive growth engines, that means tracking every step of the customer journey from first touch to long-term customer relationships, and using that to fuel compounding growth across various marketing channels. And like I said, I'm here. I know the team. I've always been very impressed when talking with them. We've hung out, we've had burgers, we've had pizzas, we've watched movies. So I'm really excited about working with this team as the next chapter of my journey. And I think that Immerse is uniquely positioned for not only solving real problems today, but leading into the future with the humanoid robotics, AI entering the physical space, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm pumped to be here. So that's a little bit about me and what we have going on.
Very cool. Thanks, Kit. I'm going to pass the mic off to Renji to give a little bit of an Immerse overview.
But yeah, so I know that there's a large number of completely new people on this call from previous calls. And so I'm going to give just a super high level pitch on Immersed. Obviously, go to invest.immersed.com if you haven't already. I think that's probably where most of you found this to begin with. If you need a deeper dive on who Immersed is and what we've done. But background on myself for Immersed, I guess my last job over, a decade ago, I was a chief architect, software architect at CNN, working on a project called greatbigstory.com. Scaled that to 3 million unique users, which was pretty fun, but didn't want to work on time waster apps the rest of my life. So I quit that and focused on a PhD in computer vision and machine learning from Georgia Tech. So self-driving cars, autonomous drones. But after about 3.5 to 4 years of the PhD, I realized, it's probably gonna be another 3 to 4 years before I get to actually go build something of value in the world. And so I ended up just quitting that halfway through the program, settled for the master's degree, ended up starting Immersed back in 2017. Kit gave his background already. A lot of you already know Joe and Alberto and some of the others on the team. Cliff and Ryan and Josh are here on this call as well, so we can dig a little bit more into their backgrounds as well. Their backgrounds are also on the invest.immerse.com page. At a high level, we've been around for about 8 years. We've raised, that number's a little bit stale now. I think as of this morning, this campaign just passed $3 million, which is exciting. We'll close the round with April 30th tomorrow, probably at 3.5 million. Close that, next 500K that comes in, we'll just kind of close it there. And so that raise today is probably closer to like 21 million, 1.4 million unique users. Again, all this is on the Immersed website. But at a high level, what Immersed does is it connects any headsets, any laptop. It spawns multiple virtual screens. It really allows you to take your workspace anywhere with you, right? So your couch, your porch, airport, hotel room, whatever, you have all of your screens with you at all times. Multiple, large, flexible, kind of portable, wherever you want them to be, ergonomic. You can lay on your hotel bed and have your screens up on the ceiling, or you could watch a movie while falling asleep. It's a really ergonomic way to work, and just a very convenient way to work. That's why we have one of the most amounts, we're one of the apps that have the most amount of user usage in all of AR, VR to date. So, just even this in and of itself hit over 1.5 billion views, or 1.4 billion views last year. And we're on track to hit about probably closer to 3 billion views this year. But as we started trying to think through how do we get past the single digit million user mark? How do we get into tens, if not hundreds of millions of users? We realized that, these sort of bigger, bulkier headsets like the Meta Quest or the Apple Vision Pro headsets, they're just not headsets that everyday people want to use, right? 2 pounds on your head, fairly expensive for the Apple headset, for example, or low resolution like the Meta headsets. That's more like a gaming toy thing for children. And so when it comes to enterprise customers or really just professional workers, they just can't see themselves using that for 40, 50, 60 hours a week every week. So when it comes to Visor, the now hardware device that we're developing, it's a device that we truly believe is going to get us to the tens, if not hundreds of millions of users. And we believe is the next generation of computing after the smartphone, right? So this is why Meta, Apple, Google, Microsoft, all these tech giants are pouring dozens of billions of dollars into the next generation of computing. And so when it comes to Immersed, because we are the only app that's figured out how to get people to spend this much amount of time, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, every week with a headset on, we have a lot of insights into how do we sort of get now everyday people to do the same thing, people who don't want to wear these big brick headsets on their heads throughout the week. And so when it comes to realizing that a lot of tech giants are starting to pivot towards the vision of what we've been working on for the past 8+ years, it's really validating, extremely exciting. We are sort of the David to these Goliaths. Obviously, I wish I had invested in Apple or Meta way back when, but now we get to actually build the next one. And so given the fact that we have just one of the largest human pose estimation data sets, one of the largest sort of immersive computing data sets in the world, and we're able to use that data to enhance the user's experience even further, this is now something that we're working on called Curator. But I'll pause there. I'll let Ryan and Cliff talk a little bit about what their experience was with Curator and Visor at NVIDIA's GTC, and then I can go back through a couple more things.
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, so as Renji mentioned, we had the opportunity to go to NVIDIA GTC conference last month. Many folks in the industry consider it the biggest AI conference of the year. As a company, we've been around since 2017, so we've really over time been able to partner with folks like Qualcomm and Google and Meta and others. We've just been really privileged to be in the room and have some of these industry conversations and see this technology evolve over time. Being at the NVIDIA GTC conference last month, it was really something special. And it really just kind of helped affirm to us that our conviction of where this technology is going and the benefits of this technology it's really mind-blowing. We're really building something special here that no one else in the industry is actually really working on right now. It's such an exciting time being in the space. There's so much intersection happening between AI and spatial computing. So just in the demo area, for example, most, if not all the demos that were in the booth area where we were doing demos of Visor and Curator were very niche and narrowly focused. There really wasn't anything that was focused on serving a really mass market appeal. For us, it's the laptop worker. Something interesting to note is most of the folks that came by to demo Visor and Curator were really not the early adopter type. We're really surprised that for many, it was actually the first time first time in a while, they experienced spatial computing wearing a VR headset. They didn't know it was possible even today to be able to wear something like Visor that's only 6 ounces, that doesn't, as Renji said, weigh kind of like a brick on your face, that you could actually use for work. And, lots of people are using it for work today. Seeing this as a monitor replacement and something more, it really opened their eyes about what's possible today, not something that is 3 or 5 or 10 years down the road. It's something they can actually use today.
Real quick, I want to add as well. So, we did not pay for this booth. This is something that Dell's team, as they realized that the Apple Vision Pro headset proved you could have 4K displays. And if you think about Dell's revenue model, 30% of the revenue comes from physical monitors. And as soon as they start realizing, oh, wow, you can actually have 4K floating monitors and as many as you want, we better get into this. They did a little bit of Googling. They found Immersed, realized we were working on Visor, and they actually had paid us to make Dell a little bit more of a fun type of experience. Obviously, most people look at Dell as sort of a legacy computing company. All the new age young hit companies in computing is like Apple and Microsoft and Google and Meta, but Dell and Lenovo and these kind of old school ones are kind of left by the wayside. So to kind of make them look young and hip, they obviously paid us to come out and show the integration between Immersed Visor and Dell's hardware, and especially powered by NVIDIA's GPUs as well. And so that's some of the curator work that Cliff could also go into. But real quick, just to kind of double down on the difference between Visor versus Apple's headset, for example. Visor is 6 ounces, like Ryan had mentioned. It's also only about 41 millimeters in thickness from your eyeball to the front of the headset, whereas these other headsets are anywhere between 50% to 100% thicker or 2x thicker. And then also, obviously, Visor doesn't look like an alien toy gaming thing on your head. It looks more like a slick pair of glasses, thicker glasses. That's why I call it a visor instead of sunglasses, for example. And then also it has the full field of view. It's not like these other augmented reality glasses that have like a 30-degree field of view. This has a full about 100-degree field of view depending on your face shape. It could be anywhere between 95 to like 1 or 3 depending on your face shape. And so Visor is something that also has 2 million more pixels than even Apple's headset, right? So we believe it's a device that we're proud of. It's a device that we feel like could get probably the next 10 million users into AR, VR, not even speaking of Visor 2 and some of the other things that we have developing behind the scenes. And so we're excited to be kind of the industry leader in this in a way that Meta and Apple likely will end up following, right? This is something we had pitched them on. Hey, can you build this approach? And their perspective was, well, we just don't have enough data points on what people actually want. We were the only company that had those data points because we were the only app that had that amount of user usage on their own headsets. And so one of our tech partners, I won't name names, but one of our tech partners mentioned that by the time Visor gets to mass production later this year, and we're able to get this into the hands of people we've never even heard of, such as employees at Meta or Apple, we should actually expect them to buy it, open it up, reverse engineer, and try to come out with their own version of it in about 24 months, which is why we are sprinting to raise as much capital as possible, or potentially get acquired as well by some of these other tech giants we've been talking to. And we'll see what that path looks like moving forward. Before we get deeper into those details, we can now kind of move a little bit more deeper into Curator. Maybe Cliff, you want to share some about your experience. By the way, if you want to learn more about Curator, feel free to go to Twitter. I put a post on there. It's even on our YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/ I believe it's Immersed VR, or just YouTube search Immersed and look up the Curator video on our channel. At a high level, what Curator AI is kind of the progression of what we built thus far. Immersed is an app that gets me into a private distraction-free workspace with multiple screens. But the headsets have been too heavy, and so that's why we started working on Visor, which is 70% lighter weight, 70% cheaper than the Apple Vision Pro, and 2 million more pixels than the Apple Vision Pro. But it's, again, really focused in on work. And then Curator enables me to, now that I'm in a private, distraction-free, comfortable workspace, how do I make myself a Renji ×2 or Renji 2.0? I really need some sort of assistant that not just goes off and does work on its own, but really enhances what I'm working on. Right. And so it can kind of index and analyze everything that I'm seeing, hearing, saying, my entire context, because we now have access to the cameras on our own headset. We can kind of observe the entire physical environment around you as well. And so the Curator, our AI, can pick up on everything in your physical environment, in your office, pretty much anywhere that you go, anything that you do. And so maybe, Cliff, you want to talk a little bit about maybe people's reactions to using Curator, maybe your own thoughts on vision and all of that. You can go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add to our GTC experience. So one of the other takeaways for me that was huge at GTC, almost obvious, is that the amount of infrastructure that has been built out and is still being built out from the silicon all the way up to I'll call it the middle of the AI tier, is just huge. And it's so huge that companies like NVIDIA, companies like Amazon, they're all hungry for applications that are going to provide the last layer of that value. And Curator is the perfect example of what slots in there. And so not only does that mean we get to benefit from all this infrastructure that's been built out, but in a lot of ways that probably gives us pricing power and other things. But so that was one of my other takeaways from GTC. But what is Curator in a little more detail? So AI agents as a label is getting used a lot lately. I think we could talk about the future of AI agents. Some of these agents will be operationally hidden to us. Others will be, more confined to the chat-like experiences that we have today. But there's a third category, which is an AI agent that's more like a personal coach or an assistant, someone that's there that understands you, you understand it, and it's not confined to just copy pasting in and out of a chat experience, but is really there helping you in the digital world and as you perform your work. And so Curator is exactly that. So we imagine Curator is this AI coach, AI assistant. We're not fixated on one platform or another, right? So whether you're a headset user or desktop user, whether you're on Windows or Mac, doesn't matter. But Curator is understanding your work streams, it's analyzing your needs, what's maybe where you're forgetting, where you're dropping the ball and need some help, right? They really are that almost virtual second person there by your side. But all that is also within a framework that, there's obviously a lot of concerns around AI. One of the things that we take very seriously is privacy, right? So by default, a number of applications are just not even considered in Curator, but we put the power in you, the user, right? So you can decide how much information you want Curator to be leveraging. And the more information of certain kind, the more useful Curator is to you, right? And so, but some examples, right? So whether it's performing repetitive actions on your desktop, reminding you or helping you to schedule meetings, offering suggestions to you real time on what your current work or task is, and really bridging the gap across today what are disparate and siloed application experiences, right? I think everyone who has changed their way of work to relying on tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, et cetera, the amount of copy and pasting we're now doing is just record highs, I think. And that's almost that'll feel an antiquated way of interacting with AI, right? We're trying to break down these barriers and really make Curator really the perfect digital assistant for you. So that's Curator in a nutshell. Our next release is right around the corner, beta release, and we're really excited about the capabilities that we have planned for you this year.
Awesome. Thanks, Cliff. Yeah. So I think another thing to kind of make it resonate a little bit more deeply, how many times have you wished that ChatGPT already had context? How many times have you had to explain so much, like a wall of text to ChatGPT to try to get some sort of helpful insight and response? All the time, I'm like, man, I wish ChatGPT was just there, so I don't have to explain all of this. It would shortcut that process so much. And on top of that, I wish that ChatGPT rather was proactive with me, not something I have to go seek out because I have to, intentionally build that habit. But rather, I wish it was something that was just already kind of living life alongside me, able to say things like, "Hey, Renji, based on the past 3 weeks worth of meetings, you have these 10 tasks that got to get done before next week's meetings. You have a 30-minute slot here. Go ahead and knock out the first three." So something that could be proactive with me, not something where I have to be on top of my own work. And so I believe that would make me into a Renji times two. And don't even just think about leadership at companies. Think about scaling this across all employees, across all organizations. The amount of output that these companies are going to get is going to be astronomical in comparison to any of these other workaround tools that people try to have today. Think about how impactful ChatGPT has already been. Imagine if ChatGPT was proactive and ever present in every context. That's what we're aiming for here with Curator, and that's what had mind blew, Qualcomm, Dell, Google, NVIDIA, these different tech giants that checked it out. And so really excited to bring a more immersive holographic experience to really bringing AI-empowered software tools to all of our users. I want to get a little bit deeper into, I know a lot of you had a lot of questions around what does funding look like moving forward via email. So we'll talk a little bit about this. So today, the WeFunder round is at the $200 million valuation. If you were part of, maybe a couple of you or a few of you here from our campaign back in 2020, when we were raising at only 10 million, right? We were just an app that was about to release onto the Meta Quest store, or back then the Oculus store. And then you invested very quickly after that round closed. We launched into the Oculus store and became one of the top most used apps almost instantly. It was really cool to kind of see that amount of user usage. I think we had onboarded about like 30 or 40,000 users within the first like 12 hours. It was really cool just kind of see that spike out of nowhere, when historically we've only ever even onboarded at that point back in 2020, maybe like 700 users ever. So to go from that to like now 30,000, I mean, it was crazy behind the scenes, trying to make sure that everything was scaling on our web API behind the scenes. But then a few months later, we raised at a much larger round just because the sheer volume of people who wanted to get their money in. That second round, so the first round raised $2 million in 2 days. The second round in 2021 raised $8 million in 2 weeks. And we kind of just played it slowly from there. We're like, all right, we have enough money to keep trying to develop out the software. But as soon as it became clear that Meta and Apple and all these other AR, VR tech giants are just going to keep building these big blocky type headsets, we ultimately realized, and we don't want to be an app that has to wait another 10, 15 years before there's a pair of glasses that all of you end up actually purchasing and adopting. And so what we ended up doing was deciding as a team, do we want to take on the risk and the daunting task of developing our own headset? And the team unanimously voted yes. I mean, this is not something that we want to wait around for. We'd rather just actually like take the risk, kind of go big or go home. And because we locked in these partnerships with Qualcomm and some others, it enabled us to really build this type of device that no one's been able to build. And candidly, even before that, I think I mentioned before on this call, we tried to not build it. We tried to get Microsoft, Meta, Google, everyone else to build this advisor type work professional device. And they agreed with our approach. They just didn't have enough incentive or desire themselves to build that, at least at the time. And since we announced Visor, it's been really cool to see how different tech giants said, oh, now we're working on something similar. And so it's been cool to kind of see the tech giants start following in our footsteps. But kind of where we're wanting to head from here. So the way that this is not even considering Curator revenue or some of the future endeavors that we're about to talk about on this call. But if we're just talking about Visor revenue in and of itself, I was initially projecting, all right, if our team really sprints and really does a good job, maybe we could hit 100,000 devices in the first year of Visor. So call it from this summer to next summer. Let's sell 100,000 devices. And by the way, there's already a tech giant who is trying to put in a 50,000 device pre-order. And so that's a $50 million deal if and when that goes through, which is already half of what my personal goal was for the year, let alone other enterprise companies who are wanting to put in POs. And so, but when we talk to one of our tech partners, I won't name their name, but one of the tech partners who have a lot of experience in building devices for AR, VR, they said, I don't think you realize what you have on your hands. Like, you're not going to sell just 100,000 devices in the first year. You guys are probably going to sell over 1 million devices in the first year. So if you think about it, $1,000 per headset on average times 1 million devices, that's about $1 billion in top line revenue. So to look at the fact that we're raising right now at a $200 million valuation, it's a pretty significant discount. This is why Mark McClain, the CEO or founder of SailPoint, put in $2 million himself, $1 million before this round, $1 million into this round. And that's something that a lot of you should take note of. This current round is a discount to the next round. So we're going to be closing this tomorrow. On May 1st, we're actually in process of registering for something called a Reg A+. It allows us to raise additional dollars from broader and larger crowds. Because all these crowd funds we've done, you're only a max allowed to raise 5 million a year. So even the 8 million, we had to like pull out certain people from that round. They had to be angel investor accredited. We had to do all this kind of jumping through hoops to get that round even done because of the SEC's legal restrictions on how much you could raise via a regulation crowdfund. And so now there's something called Regulation A+, where you could actually raise about $75 million max per year. And that's what's going to give us the war chest to be able to compete against Meta and Apple, which a lot of you all the time say, how are you going to compete against them? Which we would say, obviously, focus, number one. We're focused on coming alongside the habits that everyone already has, which is working in front of a computer 40, 50, 60 hours a week every week with a device that's optimized for that. As opposed to Meta and Apple, they're going to keep focusing on gaming and entertainment, and et cetera. And so for us, first off, our focus, but also as we continue to raise future and future rounds, like more and more people are finally finding out about Immersed and the mission that we're on. And more people are now wanting to put their money in. And so we're going to close this round tomorrow. Then we're sort of, it might be like maybe a 2 more month process before we get approved for a Reg A+ with the SEC. So they kind of really do a lot of deep due diligence, like 6 months worth of deep due diligence on the company, making sure everything looks good for Immersed. It's safe for $75 million worth of retail investor money to come in. And obviously we don't want to raise $75 million at the $200 million valuation, because that means you guys and also our team and our previous investors will get diluted like 30%. So what we do is we end up increasing the company's valuation alongside milestones that we hit. And then we kind of granularly raise more and more money. So likely what we'll end up doing is opening maybe another Reg CF while we're waiting for the Reg A plus to open up. That'll probably be July timeframe. That's the 400 million that you see here. And so the money that you invested today, the goal is by July, as we get approved by the SEC, as we open that next round, a dollar that you put in today is, or I guess the minimum is 1,000. 1,000 that you put in today is what you would have put in for $2,000 in July. And then the goal from there, again, thinking about if we do indeed pull off what our tech partners are talking about, what Bijoy's able to pull off, 1 million devices, not even 1 million. Let's say we only hit the 100,000 devices in the first year, and it was 100 million top line revenue. Typical tech startups, let alone deep tech startups or AI startups, typically they trade at about 10x revenue, right? And so for our situation, 10x 100 million would be about $1 billion, right? So if we're even conservatively saying our goal is to hit 800 million in valuation at some point next year, that's again being conservative. That's not even including Visor revenue fully of what we believe it actually can pull off. It's not including Curator. It's not including some of the robotics portions that we're actually going to talk about here. If you were paying attention to NVIDIA's keynote earlier this year, Jensen Huang, the founder, was talking about how historically, back in 2012, 2014, when it came to computer vision and perception, or how computers can perceive the physical world, they had some pretty basic computer vision algorithms that did a lot of that, convolutional neural networks, things like that. And that's a lot of what my PhD was focused on at Virtual Tech. But then in more recent years, he started seeing a lot more around Gen AI, things like, why am I blanking? These sort of, I guess, types of algorithms that ultimately did a lot of, I guess, denoising of these images. And ultimately, we're able to kind of, you saw like people had Gen AI profile pictures and different things like that on social media. And it wasn't super valuable. I remember there was a meme that showed, what we're afraid of with the future of AI, and it showed like a picture of Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then the second half said what reality was, which was like a video of like a Gen AI video of Arnold Schwarzenegger like dancing in like a tutu or something weird. And it's like, that's not at all the creepy AI or the dangerous AI that we were afraid of, at least back where on this chart or on this graph it shows generative AI. It was just sort of, I don't know, different ways of generating basic images. But in more recent years, I don't know if you ever tried the recent ChatGPT release of their generative image creation. You'll see a couple examples here in a minute. It's gotten extremely good. And now the AI has gotten to a point where now it can kind of go off and do tasks on its own. But sort of the next step is now then going to be physical AI. How do we bring, essentially what I was saying with Curator, how do we bring ChatGPT into my physical experience, into my physical world to help enhance the experience I'm already having? And so that's what Immersed is getting. Unfortunately, we've kind of taken steps in that direction and kind of aligns perfectly. And so the way that let me go to the next slide. The way that you'll see that really manifesting is kind of taking some of these neural nets, putting it into a physical embodied being, so to speak, or a humanoid robot in this case, and allowing it to kind of exist in the world and do things in the world. The form factor that people are looking for is something that can do repetitive, monotonous, dangerous jobs. And so that's why Tesla is working on Optimus. If you're not familiar with Tesla's humanoid robot, this is what Elon said is going to get them from being a $1 trillion company to a $25 trillion company. He says all the time, people make the mistake of thinking Tesla is a car company. They are not. They are an AI robotics company. Their cars just so happen to be robots on 4 wheels that can drive themselves. And so when it comes to the humanoid side of things, Tesla's starting to automate manufacturing. They're wanting to get Tesla Optimus bots into the home next year. And they're wanting to take their first humanoids to space on a SpaceX rocket at the end of next year as well. If you look at companies like Figure, they just raised, I believe, $1.5 billion at a $40 billion valuation. You've probably seen humanoid robotics built by Boston Dynamics and some others doing parkour and flips and stuff. But the part that really matters here is these are these sort of agentic AIs that are going to function in our physical world for the first time. And people are not realizing how quickly this is happening. Here's a mock-up of what we're kind of talking about here and why this is relevant to Immersed. The way in which these tech giants like Tesla or Figure are able to remote control these humanoids in order to train them on how to do certain tasks, they don't pre-program or code these robots to do much of anything. It's all based off of human pose estimations, all based off of hand tracking, body tracking. How do you sort of embody or remote control the robot and do these certain functions over and over, so that it has enough data points around how do I then move this object from here to here safely without breaking it or without misaligning it. And so what this does is it presents a problem here for a lot of these tech giants. First off, what we see at Tesla, them using the Apple Vision Pro or Meta Quest Pros. If you go, for example, to invest.immersed.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see an image of Tesla having these employees wearing Meta Quest Pros and then just moving battery cell over and over and over. And it's just the most monotonous, boring thing. And it's heavy on their neck. Obviously, when it comes to Visor, this is what a lot of people want to use Visor for, is it's a lot more of an ergonomic product that still gives the same sort of hand tracking and body tracking, all types of functionalities. And so when it comes to how do you sort of get that type of data set at scale, that's not something that Tesla or Figure or any of these humanoid robotics tech giants have figured out yet. They just keep employing their, I guess, people at their company to spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week wearing whatever Meta Quest Pro headset or whatever 2-pound headset, and then trying to kind of get enough data. But if you think about, for example, people thought full self-driving was such a difficult task, which it is, but at least you have parameters. At least it's a sort of a closed set problem, so to speak. It's on the road, on highways, like you're not going into houses, you're not off-roading that much. Like it's really just on the highways and back roads. If you think full self-driving is a difficult problem to solve, what do you think humanoid robotics, autonomous humanoid robotics is going to be in every context, in every location, environment? And when it comes to dexterity, it's a very difficult problem. And so the way in which this really aligns with what Immersed vision is, Immersed has always tried to build tools to enhance work life, whether it be for knowledge workers, office workers, et cetera. But whenever I pitch Immersed to a firefighter or a nurse or a chef, they have no concept of, why do I need screens with me all the time? Why do I need multiple screens? Like there's no concept of it. But when you think about, well, Immersed also is able to not just bring, I guess, sort of an AI augmented experience to knowledge workers who are in the office, but also now for the first time ever with the advent of humanoid robotics, we can now bring these types of tools to physical labor. And so when you think about remote physical labor jobs, being able to work from home, and this is an AI generated image of Josh being if Immerse doesn't work out for you, man, you can work at Chipotle remotely, being able to be a chef, or for example, dangerous jobs where you're climbing a telephone line pole, and you're able to kind of change things out, but you do that remotely. But I think even more importantly than all of that, not just being able to have the convenience of working remote, not only just companies having the convenience of hiring from anywhere, so you don't have to just hire from the pool of people who are local to your city. You obviously have that, but even on top of that, now for the first time ever, being able to hire one person to do the job of, say, 5 people. What I mean by that is, so say, for example, typically at Chipotle, they have these trays in very specific orders. And when it comes to being able to kind of create the same thing over and over, or being able to call it walking dogs or whatever it is, imagine one human being able to employ, or one human being able to remote control 5 humanoids at the same time, right? So that's 5x the amount of work for just one person's input. So think about this. Say, for example, Chipotle will pay a chef, we'll call it $12 an hour. We'll make it 10 just for easy numbers, $10 an hour. But you have one person who's remote controlling 5 of them and is able to do essentially $50 per hour worth of work. What if Chipotle paid that person, call it $30 an hour instead? So now you have a lot of these physical labor jobs that pay higher. Chipotle can save money because instead of paying $50, they're paying $30. And so you have that $20 spread. And ultimately, way more output is happening for the first time ever, alongside with the convenience of hiring from any sort of city. And so this is something that Immerse believes is not even just us. If you take a step back and do some market research around the size of human labor, it's half of the planet's GDP. The Earth's GDP is $100 trillion. 50 trillion of that is just physical labor. And the fact that there's a labor shortage in more developed countries like ours, and there's no shortage of people to help, I guess, internationally, especially as Starlink and other types of connectivity make this almost as if you were in person. Well, then when it comes to getting other jobs done that have a supply or labor shortage, well, you can have one person embodying multiple humanoids. And then as you start doing that over and over at scale, you start collecting a lot of the data necessary to make these humanoids autonomous, similar to how Tesla did with their vehicles. Now you can do this with humanoids in a way that incentivizes people to wear these sort of sensor collecting devices. And so that's something that's very unique to what Immersed is able to offer. It's something that has already become a very big need for these humanoid robotics companies that just don't have the scale of data that they need. And so this is something that we truly believe is going to not just have Immersed focus on remote jobs for office workers, but now broader than that, the labor force at large in general, so that you now have for the first time ever labor that it doesn't have to be just knowledge work, but really kind of lowers the bar for other people who might not be as skilled in certain knowledge-based areas that at least can do physical labor, at least for the next, call it 10, 15 plus years. I know we're kind of coming up on time, so let's dive into Q&A. I know we actually wanted the bulk of this to be Q&A, so we'll go ahead and head over to that.
One of the questions was, how is Visor better than other headsets?
And it has 2 million more pixels. The way that we pull that off is we're really just focused on the work use case. It doesn't have controllers, doesn't have built-in audio like a lot of these sort of gaming bulky headsets, mainly because our users use AirPods or Bose headphones tethered to a laptop or paired to their laptop. They use hand tracking instead of controllers to kind of shoot into the, or I guess, yeah, we don't need controllers to shoot into a virtual world. It's not a shooting game. And so it's a very different type of headset. So that's why we typically don't even like to use the word headset. We like to call it just a visor. So it's sort of a different kind of category. It's not really a VR headset. And candidly, we're not really like a VR gaming company. So
oh yeah, go ahead.
I'll just get into that real quick. Yeah. So the goal is for us to IPO as soon as we can get to that level of revenue that is meaningful. So meaning, candidly, like I've heard like Chamath and some of these other kind of industry leaders or investors talk about the timing for IPO. Typically, you need to start talking about it or start working in that direction around the $50 million top line revenue mark. And once you hit 100 million, a billion, et cetera, this now becomes compelling. And so for us, I mean, that really could start happening in really the next year. We started looking at what it looks like for us to kind of go public via other approaches like reverse mergers, direct listings, SPACs, and different things like that. But for us, I think a lot of the resounding votes of people that we look up to is, hey, just execute on Visor, get this thing out the door. It's the device that people are looking for, the holy grail device that people are looking for, at least kind of the first step towards glasses. I think I saw another question, are you ever going to work on just glasses in and of itself? I'll get to that in a second. Once you just start on this first version of this, we want to sprint towards traditional IPO. In the meantime, there's multiple companies that we've been talking to for acquisition. But again, if it's not a number that we believe really lives up to the potential of this, we'll likely not take it and we'll likely rather head towards IPO. We already have our ticker symbol reserved. And so that's still something that we are seeking out now. Someone was asking about augmented reality glasses. Currently today, it's only about 30 degrees field of view or 40, 50 for some of them. But that's just looking through a tunnel to be able to see your screens. It's a terrible experience, which is why for now we're doing more an immersive experience with cameras that allow you to have pass through like the Apple Vision Pro headset. But the approach that Immersed takes is let the tech giants pour their dozens of billions of dollars into research and development to get these certain core components to be manufacturable at scale. And then Immersed will adopt the technologies that they realize are effective for this and will almost reconfigure it or repackage it in a way that is applied better to the consumer. This is similar to what, for example, Apple did with the iPod. They didn't invent anything with the iPod, really. They really took this Toshiba 1.8 inch disk drive that fit in the size of like a deck of cards. And then they put a screen that already exists. They kind of packaged what already existed, and then they shipped it out with their software. Likewise with Visor, with us, we're not inventing anything new here. Really, we're just repackaging it in a way that resonates with people.
Yeah, I think it's worth. I think you may have touched on it a second ago, but several folks are asking, how does each round affect or dilute my equity stake?
Yeah, this is kind of the age-old fallacy that it's, I'd rather not dilute my percentage. It's if the company's next round multiplies your equity to be worth, say your equity stake is worth $5,000, and at the next round the valuation 6x's, so it would be worth 30K minus whatever dilution. We'll call it 24K, whatever the number is. 24K, no matter what, is always bigger than the 5K you first invested in. And so even though it got diluted by whatever that percentage is, call it 20% in that case, it's still something that is good for your investment because you'd rather your 5K be worth 24 versus 5. So it's better to have a small piece of a big pie rather than 100% of zero. So likewise, when it comes to these rounds, even as we raise future rounds of funding, we ourselves, here, let me go back to this slide. We ourselves don't want to get diluted. We don't want to dilute our previous investors nearly as much. Like, we want to make sure that we do this in a very meaningful way. And so because we do need to have a war chest to continue to work on Visor 1, Visor 2, Curator, and then really kind of the remote physical labor job marketplace, so to speak, or technologies that we're building, that takes a lot of capital. And ultimately, we want to make sure we do it at a meaningful, sort of granular rate. So I would say the $400 million valuation mark, that round likely would be more of a $25-ish million round. And so, do the math, 25 million divided by 400. That'll be 400 million. That'll be the percentage dilution, depending on how much money comes in. And so with each round, as the valuation of the company goes up, the value of your percentage goes up, even though there's slight dilution. So again, it's better to have a large piece of a massive pie rather than the entire pie of something that's worth $0. So another question here. How do you calculate the valuation today as of 200 million? I think I already answered that previously around where Immersed is headed. So again, if the minimum of what we pull off is 100 million in Visor sales, then typically a technology company is not a 2x multiple, it's going to be a 10x multiple. And so, this is already 20% of what a $1 billion valuation would be. So to us, it's a pretty significant discount. And if you don't believe, then you also don't have to invest. So it's just for those who want to get in for the last 500K that's left in this round.
It may be worth kind of just rehashing this because the concept of remote physical labor is such a new thing with humanoid robotics.
Yep.
Read several questions asked. So one day, will an individual or a business buy a robot and then use a headset to train it? Or will the robot manufacturer have all the training data already?
No, I think people are overlooking how difficult an autonomous robot is. So there's been humanoid robots kind of in the wild behind the scenes at manufacturing facilities for a long, long time doing like one-off tasks, like literally like one motion. And they just haven't been able to figure out how to generalize them. So, or think about it this way, how people kind of bash Elon all the time about how it took him 10 years to even figure out how to get the cars to drive themselves. Again, that's for self-driving, like car driving. When it comes to humanoids being autonomous by themselves, self-functioning, that's an infinitely harder problem than full self-driving. And even now, people still struggle to trust the Tesla to drive itself, even though now it's like one disengagement for every 750 miles in your own car, which is really, really good. But those types of Teslas, that sensor suite or that physical hardware configuration already existed back in 2016. So technically, if Elon had the software, today's software, back in 2016, he would have solved this 9 years ago. It's just, it took that much data, 9 years worth of, I guess now today, about 7 or 8 million Teslas on the road, of accruing that data and then refining it and making it better for their data set to get the cars to self-drive, to even pull that off. So if we're now talking about, these companies are working on the physical hardware of the human robotics, it's like, well, at today's rate, we're probably about 50 years away from those things being autonomous if no one is really there to build the human pose estimation, data generation, marketing, or data engine. And so when we think about what's Tesla's approach for acquiring that type of data, right now it's have employees strap on a headset and do one task, and they're just really solving their own internal problems at their manufacturing facility. Figure is doing the same thing for, I believe, BMW. And I believe Aptronic, based in Austin, who we invested 150 million in them. They are partnered with Mercedes on the same thing, but it's doing one task over and over, and it's probably about at least a minimum of 5 years away before they just solve manufacturing internally. When it comes to in the home, they talk about, oh, we can solve this and that, whatever. And if you really thought that self-driving was a hard problem, autonomous humanoid robotics functioning in the world, that's an infinitely deeper problem. And so the answer is no. This company is likely, I would like bet every dollar I have, they will not be able to provide the software for that, just the hardware. Someone's really gonna have to figure out the data engine aspect of this, and that's why remote physical labor jobs truly is the only way to incentivize humans, hundreds of millions of humans, if not billions of humans, to wear a data collecting device on their head to be able to make autonomy possible. And people ask about, oh, are you going to sell the data? How do I make sure you don't exploit my data if I don't want you to? This will all be opt-in. We're not forcing anyone to do anything. There's certain features and functionalities that need to use neural networks in order to even get certain functionalities. Like, for example, Curator. You want to use Curator? Well, you can't use Curator if you don't give it access to the cameras, because it can't really do anything in your physical world if it's blind. And so for those who opt into using certain functionalities, the trade-off is in order for those functionalities to work, we're going to need to have access to, I guess, sort of a secure private subset of some of that data. And then also, if you're not comfortable with it, then just turn it off and you don't have to be involved with it. And that's the exact same way that Tesla pulled off what they did. They allowed customers to opt in to allowing them to get that self-driving data. If they wanted to use cruise control, for example, or lane guidance, well, in order to use lane guidance, you have to turn on the neural networks. And so otherwise, if you just don't want to be part of the data collection part, turn it off and then you just can't use lane guidance. Or now in today's world, full self-driving. Sharing privacy and security with Curator, yeah. As I mentioned, everything, even on Visor right now, is all local and encrypted. And so, again, that's something that we as a company have to be very mindful of is cybersecurity attacks and all that type of stuff. So as we continue to raise more and more rounds, that's a department that we're really building out. So, I mean, it's important to you just as much as to us, because if our users have a lot of data breach issues, we're just not going to be a successful company. So that's what it goes without saying. How big can Immersed get? Yeah, I mean, again, the half of all of GDP on Earth is human labor. The fact that we're the only company who's built that sort of product that's able to allow people to tap into remote physical labor jobs for the first time, in addition to remote office jobs, and have the same in-person experience, really being the work advisor. I mean, that's, I would say, one of the biggest and potentially most successful products of all time. It's just a matter of getting the funding in, continuing to execute, and growing it from here. Like in hindsight, I was thinking about this earlier today. Back in, I think, 2019, I'd sold our house, and we got maybe like $100,000, $150,000 in profit off of the house. I put all that money into Tesla, but then I started getting scared. COVID hit, their stock price started tanking. I pulled out, I lost money. I was like, oh my gosh. And I look in hindsight, if I just kept my money in that company, if I just believed in the team's execution, like I understood the technology, I understood where they were headed. I knew that Tesla wasn't merely a car company. They were definitely a technology company, an AI company trying to achieve full self-driving, and how that'll also disrupt Uber and taxis and all this type of stuff. I was looking back, like, had I just, I don't even know if it's 100,000, I don't know the exact numbers, but I remember looking back, it was something like today would be worth something like $14 million if I just stuck with the one player in the space who was working on that mission. And so when I think about even Immersed itself, I'm like, man, there's literally no one doing what we're trying to pull off here. And if and when this gets pulled off, this is going to be life-changing. And so to answer the question, how big can Immersed get? I mean, that's up to God, first off. That's not in our own hands. But I think kind of the thing I'm excited about is I can't impact any other company that I invest in more than the one that I'm physically building myself. And so you hear all the time, like, the way in which you impact the future is you build it. And I think likewise with our team, we have a track record of building one of the most used apps in all of AR, VR history. And when it comes to being a acquisition target as a company, I mean, all the tech giants, this is the stuff that they're starting to build out, if not wanting to acquire themselves. And then sort of moving forward when it comes to the hardware, and then sort of the AI development. And then also when it comes to a lot of the future initiatives, such as remote physical labor jobs, completely new industries. You hear some of the investors in Uber or Airbnb, and they're like, oh, that sounds so weird and foreign and psycho. And it's like, had any of us listened, obviously all of us would have had a different outcome.
I think we're running out of time here. I'd like to just wrap it up with a few of the disclaimers that we'll make sure we share with the investors. We mentioned before the crowdfund for this current valuation closes tomorrow. So the valuation will go up after tomorrow. While any investment is risky, when you invest in Immersed, you're investing in a private company that is not subject to market volatility. Our investors are loyal and are coming along with us for the ride. So view an investment in Immersed as a venture capitalist investment, and expect to hold your investment for a number of years. Immersed growth horizon is strong, and our goal is an eventual IPO or public listing. Of course, though, this isn't guaranteed, and we may end up pursuing a different route. Just want really thank you guys so much for joining us for this webinar, investor webinar. Quick. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me add one more thing, Ryan. I was going to say that, look, at the end of the day, also, we fund our investors. Like, I'm an advocate for the idea of us figuring out ways to exit them and let new investors who just found out about us in as well. So obviously looking into, like, while we get the right timing of traditional IPO or the right timing of potential acquisition, in the meantime, we are looking into what it looks like to list on different secondary marketplaces for secondary sales of people's shares. So if you, for example, got in at the $10 million valuation round, and, I guess at this point, you 20x-ish your money, well, and if we're able to list on one of these, Equity Zen or Forge Global or whatever secondary marketplaces, well, new investors want to buy those shares as well. So, part of Kit's job, my job, Josh and Ryan, is to get a lot more investor eyeballs on this. Maybe think about it this way. There's about 200 million people over the age of 18 in the US who are eligible to invest in Immersed, who are like legally allowed to by the SEC. And if we only get, call it 40,000 of them, of the 200 million of them, to hear about Immersed and get interested, and they, on average, our average check size is about, maybe call it $2,000, that's $80 million. And so there's plenty of money to go around, so to speak. And there are plenty of new eyeballs that want in. And so as we kind of exit older investors, some of our friends, for example, said, maybe I'll just exit the amount that I invested to begin with. So maybe I put in 5,000 back then. It's worth, call it 90,000 with dilution, or 80,000, whatever the number is. I'll just sell the 5,000. I'll keep the other 75 in there, and just let it grow. And so everyone has a different strategy. Some people, they'll exit the whole thing. All that to say, we're open to whatever when it comes to that. We have no preference there. We're thankful for all of you who have invested in us in previous years. And moving forward, there are more and more eyeballs that now want to get in because they just never heard about us back then. The vast majority of the United States haven't heard about us. And so, yeah, when it comes to traditional IPO acquisition, yes, those will be exit events. But even in the meantime, we're wanting to channel a subset of the traffic coming to our website to secondary marketplaces so that previous investors could also just exit, let new investors in, because we don't want to only raise new rounds, because that continues to dilute the company as well. In some cases where we have the capital that we need, revenue is doing well, let's just open up a secondary marketplace where investors can just sort of trade private shares. And then, so if you're not familiar with Equity Zen or Forge Global, this is how people get shares in SpaceX, right? How do you invest in SpaceX? It's not listed publicly anywhere. Well, the way that you do that is you go into one of these secondary marketplaces and you buy shares from previous earlier SpaceX investors, because they sell it to you in kind of a private transaction. So that's something that Immersed obviously is open to. I like the idea of more and more people being able to share, oh yeah, I invested in Immersed back in 2020. They 15x or 20x my money. It's a great founding team. We obviously care for that type of reputation. So we don't care to like sit on your money for the heck of it. For us, at the end of the day, a lot of disclaimers that Ryan's mentioning is, look, the reality is we're a high risk, high reward startup, right? So your investment could go down to zero. So do not invest more than you're comfortable investing, right? So if you have $30,000 in your savings, don't put $30,000 in. Put in like 3, right? And then whatever you choose. My point is, don't look at. I remember someone telling me they put their kids' college fund in, and I was like, that's the most psycho thing. Do not put your kids' college fund in this thing. This is a moonshot. And obviously, we believe we're the team that's going to pull it off if we pull it off well. And at the end of the day, we appreciate whatever money you do decide to put in. We appreciate your support, and yeah, I think more than anything, just really kind of sharing about Immersed to the world out there. We're a huge fan of the idea of us having a distributed amount of checks into the company, as opposed to one big investor who wants to put in 100 million just themselves. We'd rather have 100 million people put in $1, or yeah, you get my example. Okay, my bad, Ryan. I just needed to put that in there as well.
No worries. Well, hey, everyone, thanks so much for joining this investor webinar. If you didn't get your question answered, just email us at invest@immersed.com. We'll be happy to answer it after this. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.